In 2013, a single mother began using a sleep tracking app to monitor her nights. But when she checked her recordings one morning, she found something deeply unsettling. The recording began with a series of faint clicking sounds, barely noticeable at first, but gradually growing louder. Then, clear as day, her own voice could be heard asking, "What are you doing?" Immediately after, a deep, unfamiliar voice responded, "Nothing." The clicking almost sounded like someone going through her personal belongings, and at the very end of the recording, the same voice muttered something like, "That's them." She had no memory of waking up that night. The only logical explanation was that she had somehow answered herself while sleep-talking, but the voice didn't sound like hers, not even close. It wasn't something she could have imitated, and it certainly wasn't her young child. As for the clicking sounds, their origin remained a mystery. She always kept a fan running for white noise, but these clicks seemed to come from right next to her phone, which rested on the bedside table.
Sorry to anyone booked to go to Thailand this summer, because you're going to want to cancel your trip. Koh Tao is an absolute paradise for many tourists that flock there every single summer. Stunning clear waters and the creamy sands just provide the perfect holiday destination. And in 2014, Hannah Witheridge and David Miller were ecstatic to be there. Hannah was 23 and was a speech and language student at Essex University. She was really looking forward to a well-earned break in the sun. David had also been working hard at Leeds University and he was 24. The pair were strangers, they'd never actually met before prior to this holiday, and each arrived on the 12th of September with separate groups of friends. They had no idea they were soon to be bonded for eternity by the same devastating fate. They both checked into the Ocean View bungalows and they actually couldn't believe their luck at how cheap this place is considering its perfect location. It was just £22 per night, and I feel like that's a lot of the attraction of Thailand for tourists. Not only is it absolutely stunning, it's also incredibly cheap to stay. They each settled into their separate rooms, buzzing for the adventures that lay ahead. But on the morning of the 15th of September, their bodies lay lifeless on the shore. They were covered in blood on the idyllic beach. A rusty gardening tool lay in the sand nearby, covered in the pair's blood. Hannah had seemingly been marred in the attack and some of David's clothes had also been removed. Police needed to immediately start piecing together the pair's movements the night before if they were going to have any chance of finding out what on earth had happened here. The bodies were found just meters away from the bungalows that they were staying in. But luckily there were lots of CCTV cameras over the island, so investigators could kind of work out where they'd been that night. They'd both been with friends going to kind of different bars in the area, and they'd both been to a bar called AC Bar, and it's reported that they both left at around 3 to 4 a.m. An Asian man was actually captured on CCTV running away from the area about that time, around 4 a.m, and then again an hour later. Could this have been the killer? Police were heavily criticised for the handling of the crime scene. They actually removed the bodies and put them in body bags before even a forensic team had showed up. They just didn't properly collect evidence, and then the Prime Minister caused even more outrage. He claimed that, quote, only tourists that were not beautiful, end quote, could walk around in bikinis for their own safety. Obviously the victims' friends were completely shaken up by their friends' murders. David's friend Sean was apparently due to meet him on the island on the night that he was killed. The plan never happened because Sean had fallen asleep, and when he woke up he heard David was dead. Now, a week after this, Sean was sat at a local bar and he had a frightening experience. He wrote on social media that the Thai mafia were after him. Now, this was after two men apparently came up to him in that bar and told him he was going to unalive himself that night. They said, "It was you who killed them, you've got people's deaths on your hands." He got a blurry photo of these people, and one of which was a worker at the AC bar. Sean was convinced that the people of Thailand just wanted a scapegoat. Obviously, the news of two murdered tourists on the island was going to impact tourism. They didn't want this to affect local business, and he felt they just wanted a tourist to be blamed to get the heat off the local people. Suddenly, 2 weeks after the killings, two arrests were made. These were Wei Fio and Zor Lin, 22-year-old locals. They'd, according to police, confessed to the crimes. The motive was apparently SA and robbing the victims. Now, the pair did confess to being on the beach that night, getting drunk and playing the guitar, but they soon retracted their so-called confession of the killings. They said police had tortured them and threatened to kill them if they didn't say that they'd done this. And apparently DNA from the murder weapon didn't match these two. There were also some discrepancies with the CCTV footage. The clothing didn't seem to match the clothing of the men that were charged. Despite this though, at their trial they were found guilty and sentenced to the death penalty. DNA on a cigarette at the beach had matched them, along with the fact that David's phone was actually found at their house. This just isn't your typical closed crime case. Many people still wonder what really happened that night, and despite a double conviction, some are left with more questions than answers. This man murdered his son to try and stop the world seeing these photos. It was 2012 in picturesque Colorado. Mark Redwine had been divorced twice and had 2 children with his ex-wife Elaine. The pair were actually in the midst of a bitter custody battle over 13-year-old Dylan Redwine. Now, Dylan had expressed to his brother Corey that he felt uncomfortable spending time with his dad. It would only later be revealed the potential reason for this: some horrifying, disturbing selfies that the brothers had found in 2011. On the 18th of November, Mark picked up Dylan from the airport. Dylan had finally agreed to go and spend some time with his dad. CCTV from the airport showed the pair barely interacting when they saw each other. Texts from Dylan's phone actually show that he had arranged to meet up with a friend the next morning at 6:30 a.m. His last text that night was at 9:37 p.m. Dylan never showed up to meet his friend the following day, and his friend texted him at 6:46 a.m. He was really worried when he never got a reply. Mark's version of events would later be that Dylan had left that morning and just simply never returned. Now, a huge search of the local area began. Everybody was looking everywhere for missing Dylan. Interestingly, at 11 p.m. that night, Mark's house went pitch black. Now, with a missing child, you would think that Mark would be up all night desperately trying to find the whereabouts of his missing child. Either that, or he would at least leave some kind of lights on so that if Dylan did come home, he could see the house, he could get in. Within days of the disappearance, one of Mark's ex-wives told police something harrowing. He had apparently previously told her that if he wanted to dispose of a body, he would get rid of it in the mountains. He'd also apparently said to her that he would rather kill the kids than let her have them. Obviously, this was very disturbing in the context of the custody battle that was going on. Mark was interviewed on TV and asked about the allegations against him. He appeared quite suspicious on this interview because he was talking about his son in the past tense. An agonizing 7 months passed before Dylan's remains were eventually found. He was only 8 miles from Mark's house, just off a trail. A witness came forward to say that they had seen Mark driving alone in the area in April 2013. The trail that Dylan's body was found off was an ATV trail, so an all-terrain vehicle trail. Mark actually owned an ATV himself. Mark and Dylan's mum actually appeared on the Dr. Phil show shortly after. They were throwing accusations at each other. Interestingly, Mark refused to take a lie detector test. Then a telling discovery was made. In August 2013, police found Dylan's blood in Mark's living room. Cadaver dogs also indicated the smell of death. A cadaver dog also indicated that human remains were present in the washing machine of the home. Cadaver smell was on Mark's clothes and in his vehicle. Mark was arrested for second-degree murder and child abuse. So what was the motive for this crime? As I mentioned, there were some really sickening images that the brothers had found. Dylan's brother stated that the pair discovered the photographs of Mark dressed in women's clothing with human feces all around his face, eating human feces from a nappy. Now, one of the images is just too graphic for me to post on TikTok, but you can easily find this on Google. Dylan and his dad's relationship had been gradually declining. Dylan had actually asked his brother to send him the images that his brother had collected just before the November visit. He said he intended to confront his dad about them. He had no idea this would be fatal. The prosecution claimed that when Mark found out that Dylan knew about these photographs, it triggered a rage in him and he killed Dylan. He was given 48 years in prison for the murder of his son. This child beauty queen was found dead in the basement of her home, and her murder is considered one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in American history. JonBenet Ramsey was born on the 6th of August 1990. She lived with her parents, John and Patsy, and her older brother Burke. Her dad was a rich businessman and her mum was a former beauty queen. On Christmas 1996, against a backdrop of snow and fairy lights, tragedy would strike. The family had a normal Christmas day at their friend's house and went home at around 10 p.m. They were due to get up early the next day to fly to Michigan to go to their holiday home. The following morning, Patsy woke up at 5:30 a.m. to a hideous shock. At the bottom of the stairs was a 2.5-page ransom note. It stated, "Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police or FBI, will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It's up to you now, John. Victory, SBTC. After initially calling her friends for help and to come round to the house, Patsy then dialed 911. Police raced over to the scene, as did many of Patsy and John's friends. Now, unfortunately, whilst this was very supportive of them, this did contaminate the crime scene. Police tried to prepare for the kidnappers to ring up to claim the money, but interestingly, no one ever called. Shortly after, the detective ordered a search of the house, and this is when John Bonet's dad tragically discovered his daughter's lifeless body in the basement of the home. She had been killed from blunt force trauma to the head and strangulation. Now, the parents gave blood, hair and handwriting samples to detectives and fully cooperated. However, they were scrutinised by many. Was a family member to blame for the killing, or had an intruder broken in? The basement already did have a broken window, which could have potentially been a point of entry for an intruder. There was also a boot print found down there which didn't match any of the family's shoes. A makeshift garrote had been used to strangle the little girl. This was made using a length of cord and part of a paintbrush from the basement. DNA was collected from John Bonet's underwear, but has unfortunately never been matched to an individual. John Bonet also had marks on her face which some theorised could have been made by a stun gun. Did an intruder use a stun gun to taser John Bonet and then overpower her? She also had pineapple in her stomach, but her parents said that they never fed her any that night. Some theorise that her brother Burke could have potentially got angry at her stealing his pineapple if the two of them went down in the middle of the night to eat, and maybe had struck her over the head, accidentally killing her. Some say that the parents may have then covered up the killing to protect their son. Currently, the case remains open and unsolved, and I dive into loads more detail in this case about the potential theories, the ransom note, the 911 call on the latest episode of my podcast, The Bourne Investigation. You can listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
She was a therapist for children, then began SAing one of her 13-year-old patients, and when she was caught, tried to kill his mom. I can't even sugarcoat it, this case is insane. This is Peyton Shires, and at the time that our case starts, Peyton was really living the perfect life. She just got engaged to her long-term boyfriend Nicholas, they bought a really nice house together, they had 3 dogs together, and just had a baby together. Peyton was also about to land her dream job, but Peyton and her fiance Nicholas had a dark secret. Peyton's fiance Nicholas had previously been charged with SAing a 14-year-old girl. How these two people found each other is terrifying. Because Peyton's entire life, she had a dream to work with children. She wanted to be a social worker and work with the most vulnerable children. And in 2023, when Peyton was 23 years old, she landed her dream job as a social worker and therapist for the National Youth Advocate Program. This program helped kids and families with all kinds of things, foster care, prevention, and counseling. So Peyton was going to become a therapist, like I've said 1,000 times now, for the most vulnerable children and children with mental health issues or other kinds of struggles. And what Peyton did after landing this job is one of the most disturbing things I've ever read, because less than 2 months after getting this job, Peyton began SAing a 13-year-old boy, one of her patients. This is a child, a little boy who was struggling with things at school and at home, and his parents brought him to therapy to try and get him help. And then their son starts being statutory SA'd by his therapist. It's horrific. This lasted the entire summer of 2023. And this started so fast. Like I said, Peyton began SAing this child, one of her patients, after only having this job for less than 2 months. It's like, was she planning this all along? Or did she do something like this before? Because that's so fast. This boy's mother starts to realize that there's something off, so she goes through her 13-year-old son's phone and she sees that her child's therapist was texting her child. And the text message said, "Have you deleted the video yet? We need to make sure your mom doesn't see it." But right away, his mom goes to the police with her son's phone, and they are able to recover the video off his phone because he had deleted it. And this video was truly disgusting. It was graphic. It was shocking. It was this 13-year-old boy's therapist statutory SAing him. It's sick. The betrayal, it's unbelievable. How would you ever trust anyone ever again with your child? The police had this 13-year-old boy's mom call Peyton and confront her while they record it, and she confessed right away. And she also begged her not to go to the police. Little did she know she already had. On October 6, 2023, Peyton was arrested. She was actually arrested on her birthday. It was her 24th birthday. She was arrested. But this case does not end here, because after Peyton is released on bail, what she does next is insane. Peyton goes to her victim's house with a weapon because she wants to kill his mom as revenge because she turned her in. She's like pretty much lost her mind. She has the weapon, she's firing it at the house and at the windows. She's screaming that she's going to his mom. She's screaming things like, "This is all your fault and you've ruined my life." And again, she's using this weapon like on the windows. After that, she has no idea what's happening inside, if people are getting hit. And then Peyton gets inside the house, but luckily no one was home. But what would have happened if they were? Peyton was arrested. She got an additional charge of threatening a witness, but she was not charged with attempted murder. And Peyton cried all the time, and she really played the victim, and she actually blamed the real victim, saying that he pursued her and it was all of his fault. Peyton was facing 28 years in prison, but was sentenced to only 4 years and 9 months with credit for 253 days that she served awaiting trial. And with good behavior, Peyton could be released at the end of this year, 2025, after serving only 18 months in prison. Could be released from prison early for her crimes of SAing a child, and that child will still be a minor if she's released at the end of 2025. Where is the justice? Can you even believe that? This case is insane. Her abuse of power is one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard about, and also really, really disgusting. She was a mother. She had a son. Her son was only 9 years younger than her victim. The fact that she was facing 28 years in prison and could be released after serving only 18 months. How did this little baby disappear from her crib in the middle of the night? This is the bizarre disappearance of little missing baby Lisa Irwin. Lisa was born on November 11th, 2010. Her parents, Debbie and Jeremy, both had sons from previous relationships, so not only was Lisa their first child together, but she was also the first little girl of the family. Her nickname in the family was Pumpkin Pie. Lisa was the sweetest, happiest little baby. The family was living the perfect life until October 3rd, 2011. For the most part, it was just like any other day. After dinner, Lisa's dad, Jeremy, left to go work a night shift. This happened sometimes, but it was really uncommon for him to work a shift during the night. Debbie put her daughter Lisa in her crib to bed. She put a movie on for the two older boys, and then Debbie invited one of her neighbor friends over to hang out, drink some wine on the front porch outside, every so often checking on the three kids inside. Around 10:30, the neighbor went home. Debbie put the two boys to bed, and then she went to sleep herself. Jeremy didn't get home from work until it was nearly 4 a.m., and when he got home, he immediately noticed that things were off. First thing, the front door was unlocked, which Debbie never did, especially with three kids sleeping inside. And also, there were just a bunch of lights on throughout the house, which is something that Debbie never did. It seemed like Debbie went to bed without actually shutting down the house. Debbie was fast asleep. The two boys were also asleep. But when Jeremy went into his daughter's room, 10-month-old baby Lisa was missing from her crib. There's immediate panic. Everyone wakes up in the house. Everyone's looking for Lisa, even though she's 10 months old. She can't go very far. Her parents try to call 911, but both of their cell phones are missing. Luckily, Jeremy had his work phone, so he was able to call the police. In press releases and interviews with the media, both of Lisa's parents seem truly heartbroken about their missing baby girl. But almost immediately when the investigation began, 10-month-old Lisa's own mother, Debbie, was the prime suspect in her disappearance. Debbie was the last one to see her daughter alive. Also, Debbie changed her story quite a few times, which is never a good sign. She lied multiple times about how much wine she actually had to drink that night, and she told multiple different accounts on when was the last time she saw her daughter, when was the last time she checked on her daughter in her crib. At one point she said 10 p.m., another time she said 6 o'clock. Very different times. There was a window in the home that looked tampered with, and her family believed that the intruder used this window to break into their home and kidnap little Lisa. But the police do not believe that this is very likely. They believe that the window is too high for an intruder to easily enter through without waking up everyone in the house. Also, the windowsill was covered in a pretty decent layer of dust, which was completely undisturbed. So if someone used this window to break in through and crawl through, they would have messed up that layer of dust. The investigators were thinking it was more and more likely that Lisa's mother knew more than she was letting on and possibly had some kind of hand in her daughter's disappearance. And to be honest, a child being abducted from their own room, it happens, but it's very rare. The investigators began pretty much straight up accusing Lisa's mother, Debbie, of doing something to Lisa. And it made it even worse when Lisa's mother, Debbie, failed a polygraph test. And then only 3 days later, after their baby went missing, Lisa's parents both stopped cooperating with the police. And in the public eye, this made them look even more guilty. Debbie explained herself by saying that the police were accusing her of doing something to her child and she knew that she didn't do it. So they were wasting their time focusing on her. But to other parents, this was a very controversial move. You would think that you would do anything to help the police find your daughter. It doesn't look great. And then to make it even worse, cadaver dogs got a hit on Lisa's parents' bedroom, which means it's likely that there was a body in that room. So it's absolutely not looking good for Lisa's parents, but there is another possible suspect, and one I actually believe even more. On the night that 10-month-old Lisa Irwin disappeared from her crib, multiple witnesses saw a man walking around holding a little baby. The first sighting being only down the street from Lisa's family home. And all the witnesses described the same thing, the same man holding the same baby. And all of them described the baby that the man was holding as being severely underdressed for an infant being out in October in the middle of the night. And it's been widely speculated that that man was a homeless man in the area named John Jersey Tanko. And Jersey had a long criminal history, which included breaking into a bunch of houses, breaking into homes to either sleep in them or rob them. And he was known to break into homes by going through their windows. The night that Lisa disappeared, Jersey was seen just down the street from her home, literally only a few houses down. And he had absolutely no alibi. It's very possible that he was watching the home waiting for her father's work truck to leave, then he broke in and kidnapped Lisa, but what would be the motive? And this is where this case gets so insane. You remember how I said in the beginning that both of Lisa's parents' cell phones were also missing the night that she vanished? So they checked their phone records, and turns out Lisa's dad's phone was used to call a woman that he never met before around midnight, the night that his daughter went missing. And that woman was the ex-girlfriend of Jersey. So did he break in, steal his phone, call his ex-girlfriend, and then also steal their daughter? Jersey and his ex-girlfriend were on again, off again, and they broke up only a week before Lisa vanished. And Jersey's ex-girlfriend recently mentioned before they broke up that she wanted a baby. Could Jersey have thought if he kidnapped Lisa and gave Lisa to his ex-girlfriend that she would take him back? Could that have been the original motive, but then along the way something changed? Statistically, babies are taken to either be raised or sold into illegal adoptions. Women often take babies more than men, but when men do, it is to give them to someone else to be raised in exchange for money. I mean, is it possible that Jersey, who had a criminal background, also didn't have a lot of money, took Lisa and sold her? I would be really interested to see if anyone that was close to Jersey at this time remember him coming into a bunch of money right after Lisa disappeared. Officially, John Jersey Tanko has never been convicted of doing anything to Lisa, and he's consistently maintained his innocence. I personally think it's really possible that Lisa still is out there and being raised by another family, and that she has no idea that she's even a missing person. If Lisa was still out there, she would be 14 years old. I do have an age progression photo on the screen now. With cases like this, it's so important to get the info out there, so please interact with this video in some way. Share the video, share her photo. It's very possible that Lisa will recognize herself. She's 14 years old. It's very possible that she has a TikTok. Her parents, Debbie and Jeremy, are still together. They truly do believe that she is still out there, and they still have hope that one day she will come home. This case definitely has people divided. There are still a lot of people that think that Lisa's mom knows more and possibly did something to her, even if it was just an accident. If you've never heard this case before, just brace yourself because it's so bizarre. After the death of her husband, this woman wrote and published a children's book to help her kids cope with losing their dad, just for it to come out that she was the one that killed him. Like I said, brace yourself because this is going to be very crazy, and yeah, my background has changed. I just moved and I don't have any furniture yet. This is Eric Richins. Everyone that knew him said he was just the greatest guy. He was super religious, very hardworking. He even co-owned his own successful business. Eric loved life, loved outdoors, and loved his family. And it wasn't long after Eric met Corey that the two started dating. Then the two of them got married, and they built this beautiful life together, which included 3 young sons. Eric was just the greatest dad. He was super involved. He was really busy owning his own business, but he made sure never to miss the important stuff. It really seemed like the 5 of them had this perfect family. But that all changed 3 a.m. on March 4th, 2022, when Corey called 911 to report that she found her husband dead in their bedroom. Corey claimed that the night her husband Eric died, the 2 of them were actually celebrating. Corey bought and flipped and sold houses, and she had just closed on this really big, nice property, so they were celebrating that. But at some point during the night, one of their young sons had a nightmare, so Corey took him back to bed, tried to calm him down, and it wasn't until 3 a.m. that she walked back into their bedroom and found her husband cold to the touch and unresponsive, laying in their bed. The police arrived. Corey told them that her husband Eric actually had a problem with prescription medication, so maybe he OD'd. And all of this was really confusing to Eric's family for multiple reasons. They felt like what Corey was saying didn't make sense at all. Eric did not have a problem with substances. He had no history with substance use, and there were no substances found in their house. Also, the fact that they were celebrating the night that Eric died made 0 sense to anyone that actually knew him, because turns out Eric was actually adamantly against Corey buying this property. He thought it was a terrible decision. He thought that this property was a money pit, and the 2 of them were actually fighting about this a lot. So why would he be celebrating something that he was really against doing? Eric's family actually had a lot of reason to believe that his wife Corey had murdered him, mainly because Eric told his loved ones that if anything ever happened to him, that his wife probably did it. And not only that, shortly before Eric died, he had told his friends and family that he believed that his wife had already tried to poison him twice already. Once on a vacation that they were on 3 years prior, and the second time was actually only 3 weeks before Eric died. Eric also knew that his wife, Corey, had tried to go behind his back and change his $2 million life insurance policy to make herself the beneficiary, and that was only 3 months before he died. Eric was so suspicious of his wife that he had already gone to a divorce lawyer, and he had written his wife, Corey, out of his will, which is something that Corey did not know about. So things are already not looking good for Corey. She definitely is looking really suspicious, but then she did stuff that made her look even more guilty. Literally the day after her husband died, Corey threw herself a big party to celebrate her buying that big, huge property that her husband did not even want her to buy in the first place. She was at this party, drinking, having a great time, and she didn't even tell anyone at the party that her husband had just died. And when Corey found out that Eric had actually written her out of his will, she flipped out. Eric was worth millions, and she wasn't going to get a single cent of it. Eric actually changed it and left everything to his sister, and when Corey found out about this, she was so mad, she tried to attack Eric's grieving sister only days after her brother died unexpectedly, and then she tried to sue his sister only 3 weeks after her husband died. Her husband has just died out of the blue. It was very unexpected. Her 3 young sons, they were like between the ages of 10 and 6, had just lost their father, and all Corey can seem to worry about is money. Investigators on Eric's case were definitely looking at his wife Corey as a suspect, and then it got even worse when Eric's autopsy and toxicology report came back. Eric was murdered. He was poisoned. He had 5 times the lethal amount of a street substance in his system. And a look at his wife's phone records showed that Corey had bought almost $2,000 of this illegal substance from a dealer right before her husband OD'd on it. The police chose to investigate Corey quietly so she didn't do anything crazy. So for about a year, Corey lived life as normal, thinking that she got away with murder. And what she did in that time after her husband died, you will never believe it. Corey wrote and published a children's book to help children with grief after someone died. She claimed that she wrote this book because her children were in so much pain, so she wanted a resource to help them cope with their pain, but there was no other book like this on the market, so she decided to write it herself so she could help her children with their pain and hopefully help other children as well. She called the book Are You With Me? She dedicated it to her husband Eric. She even went on TV to promote her new book. And then on March 8th, 2023, only 3 days after this book was published, she was arrested for her husband's murder. So obviously this case made huge headlines. It went super viral.